Hey, back again. Today, this game, we're going to look at Ruslan Ponomariov with the white pieces versus Wang Hao with the black pieces. And this game occurred a few years ago, 2013. Good game, though. And your favorite defense, the Petroff defense. Just kidding. Okay, the thing about the Petroff though is no longer a surprise. It used to be one of those secondary type openings back in the days. Player would normally try out the Rui Lopez, and the Petrov would be like the second rate defense when he was having a hard time in his primary opening. But now you see, the Petrov more and more often. And this game features my favorite line to play is white against the Petrov, and that's one of the reasons why I'm looking at this game today. So after the main moves, knight takes e4. Instead of d4, I like this line, knight c3, because of its aggressive nature. Now, it's only aggressive though when opposite side castling takes place. So if the knight takes c3, d takes c3, bishop e7, White's plan is very straightforward. His queen side is almost developed, and he usually plays moves like bishop e3, queen d2, and castles queen side, and throws his pawns at white on the king side. Now I like that kind of game. So bishop e3 from Ponomariov, knight c6, queen d2, bishop e6, and castling. Now, you need to know here that Queen d7 is normally played here. But and the reason why is although tempting as it may seem, bishop takes a2 just falls short of the mark. After b3, trapping the bishop. Now, this is obvious to most players, but a lot of times, if you just look at the position, it looks like that you can make something happen because you had the rook there on a8. So after say a5 for instance, you figure you just open up the file, which you can, but you just don't have enough. So a takes and king takes b3, and there is some compensation in that the white king's exposed, but it's just not enough. And with careful play, white can stem the tide of the attack that black is trying to develop in this position. So for instance, bishop f2 looks like king b2. I like bishop c4, right? Maybe even just bishop e2 here. Then just start trading off some pieces, and black just does not have enough for the sacrifice piece. So this is why you don't see any masters playing bishop takes a2. You might see some low rated games with that, but not in any serious tournaments. So queen d7, and here black still has the option to castle on the queen side if he wants to. Ponomariov goes for it, h4, h6, and I usually don't like to launch these early attacks here because it's not written in stone that black has to castle over there. Matter of fact, after say bishop d3, black could just castle on the queen side. Now, the positive side is you can gain space after h5. I mean, you still have a positional advantage over there in the space that you've gained on the king side. So king b1, bishop f6 was played. Now knight d4, knight takes, bishop takes, and queen takes d4. And of course, this move discourages queen side castling. C takes d4 is just as playable here. There's absolutely nothing wrong with c takes d4, just straightening out the pawn structure. And black can still castle um, either way. Although d5 is a good move right here. But Ponomariov plays the move queen d5, which centralizes the king. Attacks right here, right? And of course, it prevents queenside castling. So it kind of forces white over to that side. Again, if c takes d4, it cuts that option out. There's no attack now. So we can see the idea of white leaving his pawns disrupted. Queen takes d4, castle. So white has the black king where he wants. And bishop e2. Of course, other moves are possible here. Rook g1, for instance, with the idea of playing g4. And these are, there's some possibilities, and the position, of course, is very sharp. And this is why I like this position, positions for white. And I actually think that white is better. And this is from the game Caruana with the white pieces versus Constantine Landa. And we see the pressure that Fabiano was able to build up. And he destroyed him this game, as you can see. It's a good way to learn openings too, by the way, is playing miniature games. Like, for instance, if you're trying to learn this line, play games that end in under 30 moves, just real quick, just so you can get a feel for it. Don't even study the theory, just get a quick feel for it and see what it looks like when things go absolutely right in white's favor. Then after you do that, then go play some blitz games, right? Still, don't study the theory, don't bother with it. Just play a bunch of blitz games. Then after you done that, then go hit the theory, right? And then repeat. Then start playing some slower games, and then analyze those games. Then repeat the process, and you'll get the opening. But back to our game, Rook G1 wasn't played. Bishop E2 was played. Rook A E8, and now we see this idea. Bishop F3. B6 and G4. So we see the same type of idea brought about in a different way, except that the rook stays off the G file here. So G5. And another caveat of this position is now with the bishop on F3, right, as opposed to being here on G2 as we saw in the other game, the Caruana example I gave you. Where was that bishop at? Yeah. So in this position, after G5 with the bishop on G2, black can, slow things. Even though he got crushed, he could slow things down a little bit with H5. That's a logical response. Although this is just brutal, like what happened right here. But it can attempt to slow things down right here. Whereas in this position, with the bishop here, after G5, there will be no H5 here. All right. This same position before G5, Ni Ha played Queen D2 against Nishigiri with this idea, but Gary just put a stop to things by playing F6. And this game wind up being a draw. Okay. So back to our game, G5, right? Not waiting, not Queen D2, but just pushing right away. And now, again, when we compare and contrast games, now Wang Hao's next move makes a lot of sense. He plays Queen C4. So he's threatening this check right here, and he, wants to trade queens, right? Without queens, White's kingside attack is obviously less dangerous, right? So with this idea of Queen C4, you can see why Ni Hao played the move Queen D2 in this in a similar position here, and that way that avoids that idea. You see? So now with Queen D2, there is no C4 here, and then you could just play a move like B3, right? And then after Queen B5, G5. Okay. So in this game, Ponomariov went straight away with G5, but it allowed this move Queen C4, which of course he saw, but he probably in his preparation willing to accept that. So he plays G takes H6. Okay. And now Queen takes D4. This move is no good because it's just a check. That's no more than that. The King C1, there's no way to adequately defend the king side. For instance, F6, H takes G7, Queen A1 is just meant by that, and then the rook is under attack as well as this. So after G takes H6, the queens are forced off the board. Rook takes D4, and now we have this end game here. G takes H6, and this is a time to stop and consider. Again, like if you're interested in playing this kind of opening, is this is a typical end game scenario that you come up with, and you have to decide if you like this end game or not for White. If you're thinking about taking this lineup. Black's position is very, very solid. I mean, it's equal here. So you got to be willing to kind of like deal with the slightest of initiatives here. For instance, you can attack if you're White here, you can attack the A7 pawn, for instance, by playing a move like Rook A4. You can play Bishop C6, right? You have like these slight moves that you can do. You can play Rook G1 check, etc. Right? But it's nothing. You have a little bit of space advantage. You occupy the first 4 ranks. Black only occupies the first 3. So I mean, it's a real minute advantage. So it is what it is. But you must decide if you like that. So here Ponomariov plays Bishop C6, Rook D8. There it is. Attacks the pawn. A5, right? Easy enough to defend, but that's the whole thing about it. Is you gotta be, try to provoke, weaknesses. So now he attacks with B4. Right? Black doesn't want to weaken his position, his pawn structure. So after A takes B4, C takes B4. So the whole game we've been waiting for White to straighten out his pawn structure. He had 3 chances to do it, and he finally does it on this 3rd time. So now we can see from that position, White has made some progress here. He has his rook on the open A file, and he can penetrate. And what's cool about it from his perspective is this bishop is very strong and prevents any kind of defense there. So this makes Black's move, right? This shines a light on Black's next move. So I just pointed out to you what Black's problem is. He wants to play that, but he can't. He wants to stop this. So therefore, he has to get on it right away. So it makes 100% sense that he attacks his bishop. But however, right, by him attacking the bishop, bishop takes, rook takes, and here's a serious move that had to be considered here, is rook to the 7th rank. Right? If I'm looking in this position, I'm thinking of 3 moves. I'm thinking of rook g1, rook e7, right? Taking over the e file, and I'm thinking of this. Right? Those are like 3 candidate choices that I would be considering. And I'm sure the Grandmaster Ponomariov was considering too. But I have an affinity going to the 7th rank, right? Because all that classical chess literature, rooks on the 7th, rooks on the 7th. So that would probably just be my move, rook a7. Can't knock him for taking over the open e file though, right? And keeping the enemy rooks from penetrating down, right? Because after rook a7, yes, this pawn is attacked, and this piece is tied here for the time being. But then there's some counterplay here, opportunities. For example, after a4, you got rook e4, c3. So it's kind of double-edged there. So we can see why Ponomariov played rook e1. And besides, he figures any kind of move or this c pawn will weaken the d and b pawns. So he figured he can get that later. So rook e1, king g7 now. Now, again, let's look a little deeper into this. Now here, I would definitely play rook a7 right away. But let's look at it a little deeper. So look at the pawn structure now. Right, we had these 2 pawns on the king side versus 2 pawns on the king side. And white's h pawn is awfully close to the black king, so white has to be careful not to get his pawn picked off at some point. Right? But if I'm white, my concentration is more on the queen side. The reason why is very simple. Is I have the opportunity to create a pass pawn here, and that's what my goal would be. And this is one of the reasons why I would get this rook out of here, so I can make room to create this pawn. Alright, so the fact that white has this possibility in the position means that black has to be very careful. Like, it's not a simple, simple endgame, even though at first glance it looks like that. Continuing on, king b2, king g6, and now we see this idea, rook a3. Okay, and black has to be careful about attacks on this king too with the rooks. So for instance, this is idea with h5 check, right? Remember I was saying how that pawn is vulnerable. Well, in this variation, white just gives it up. King takes h5. Now rook g1, blocking off the king. Right now the king is stuck, and now you have this idea of rook a3 and mate. Okay. Now in this particular instance, rook e8 saves the day for black, or rook e7. So rook a3. And then rook e4 is just in time. So after rook h3, then rook h4. But just to know that I just wanted to show you the ideas in a position that's lurking, right, behind the moves that are actually being made. So there it is, king h5. Now, Wang Hao himself said that move was too optimistic, but it looks like a good move. So rook g3. And now he can't take the pawn, of course, and the king is somewhat cut off. He plays f5 here. Alright. c5 here is an option. So what's wrong with f5 here? The problem with f5 is it, again, every pawn move leaves a weakness in its wake. Here, the weakness that's left behind is e6. Okay. Now you say, well, what's the big deal about the rook coming to e6? The big deal about it is that it cripples the queenside pawns of white. So now, excuse me, the queenside pawns of black. Forgive me for mixing the colors up. So now this pawn can't move without serious repercussions here. Right? It's very difficult to. If he does that, for instance, then you have. I'm sorry, not that one. There we go. So now you're attacking this and this at the same time. So it kind of puts black in a bad spot here. So b5, king b3, and that's a good move, b5 positionally, because right now it kind of slows down the idea of creating that passed pawn. f4, rook g6, and black is close to the edge. Black is walking a tightrope. Rook h7, f3. Now I like c4 right here because again I want to create this passer. So I like this idea of attacking this pawn right here. Right, because he can't do nothing right now because of that d pawn. So this pretty much forces that. Then after king takes c4, then these guys are running up the board. Right, for example, f3, a4. Okay. Now, Ponomariov is one step ahead of me. He has that idea in mind, but instead of allowing the counterplay that would occur with rook f4 check, right, in this line, now white's still better, but again, allowing this rook to come now, what does first is plays f3, so now there will be no rook f4. So now instead, rook f5 comes down. And there it is, c4. So the same idea. Bishop takes and king takes c4. Now white is very close to winning here. Now instead of b takes c4, here he could have played rook e5 and still try to maintain that pawn. But it seems after c takes b5, rook e3 check, king c4, rook a3, white is still better, but he has more difficult time converting. Right, again, note that after king takes h4, rook takes e3, f takes e3, king d3, that white is got to be winning here. All right, let's go back. Bishop takes c4, king takes c4, rook e5, and he doesn't trade rooks here. Right, great move. Rook e f6. And now I think it's time for white to cash in. And what I mean by cash in is pushing this a pawn. It's time. So So let's see. Now here again, if black played rook e3, rook g4, it's very, very hard for black to get out of this situation. So in the game, no, back to the game. King takes h4 was played, and then rook takes f4 check. Again, instead of rook f4 check, a4 is all, you know, samples, lines that could have been played. Again, white in the driver's seat. King h3, and Ponomariov plays rook fg4. Again, just why not a4? You know. So now, after a couple of missteps by Ponomariov, black plays h5. And we have to remember, although the king is confined here right now, this pawn is also passed. So if the rooks, say the rooks get traded off and the king can step over, this pawn becomes dangerous. Rook g3, king h2, rook g2, king h1, rook g1, king h2. You know, a little harassment going on. But now watch what happens. So now Ponomariov plays rook g7. Rooks are traded. And rook e3 now. Finally, he plays a4. If Ponomariov takes this pawn, then rook a3 is played. But again, I think at the b5, still b5 and b6, that white should still be winning. But a4 is played. Now rook a3, king b5, king c5, creating that some counterplay there. Good move. And here the players agreed to a draw here in this position, although there's some play in the position. It is possible that the play can go, for example, d takes c5, a5, and h4, and the point is that in order to queen this pawn, that somewhere along the lines that this rook has to assist. So let's go with the let's just play some, like, play it on a little bit. So f4, for instance, c4, and of course the rook can stay, because it's important that the white rook keep the black king confined to the h file, because soon as this king can step off, then the king becomes dangerous. And so what you see is the combination. All right, so then you can see the outcome would be king takes c3, and then the a pawn would drop, and then that will pretty much bring us to like this drawn position here. All right, so let's go a little further with it, and that will be it. So instead of going through all of that, of course that's how play could have gone, you know, mistakes could be made and stuff like that, but instead of it going all the way to that, the players just simply called it quits and agreed to a draw at move 47. So anyway, the consensus with that game is that white should have probably won that game if he had choose to pursue the move a4 a little bit sooner. Seemed like Ponomariov was just a bit too cautious. You know, they say don't rush when it comes to, you know, end games and stuff, but it seemed like he just a little too cautious, and it gave Wang Hao some time to get out of it. All right. Again, comments welcome. please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next video.